Egypt and the classical world cross-cultural encounters in Antiquity. I am Isis. Hellenized Isis. The goddess Isis who arrived in the Aegean is essentially a product of Hellenistic religious thinking. In the Hellenistic period, Isis was associated with not only spoken, but also written language. In the Isis-eretology, she claims to be the inventor of the Egyptian script. I am Isis, the mistress of every country. I was brought up by Hermes-the, and with Hermes I invented the script, the hieroglyphs and the demotic script, so that not everything would be written with the same characters. During the Hellenistic period, this practice did not cease. Serapis was known as a letter writer. The majority of the gods' utterances were spoken, however, and not written. In Hellenistic times, Isis could apparently even bestow language itself. Thus, in a literary Isis-eretology from the Vita Aesopi, a story has been preserved in which the mute slave Aesop meets the goddess Isis with the help of a priestess. In her prayer, the priestess compares the absence of language to the absence of light. At least give him language, for you are able to bring back what has fallen into darkness. But Aesop, once he regains his language, wonders, where did I get the language from? Certainly in gratitude for the fact that I acted piously against the priestess. So it is good to be pious. I expect to receive from the gods the good hopes. The relationship of Isis with her interlocutors has undergone a change. In Egypt, Isis spoke with gods, but usually not with mortals, in accordance with her mythical role. In the Aegean, she spoke with the cult community, but not with the gods. The example of the god Serapis, her consort in the Aegean, may explain this circumstance. With him there is no linguistic interaction. Instead, her pairing with Serapis involved more of a division of tasks between two self-reliant deities than a constructive cooperation. This approach helped believers to differentiate the sometimes specific functions of Isis and Serapis, but it also makes it difficult to understand how the gods were assigned to certain tasks. For example, Serapis was regarded as a god who liberates slaves, especially in Boeotia, and Isis acted as a nurse for the sick and women in childbirth. In the Peloponnese, in contrast, Serapis was equated with Asclepius, the god of salvation, while in the name of Isis, it seems, a sanatorium was maintained in Philippi. This diversity of functions makes it difficult to assign clear responsibilities to Isis and Serapis. The Hellenized Isis, who was invoked by cult communities as the one of 1,000 names and at the same time as the only one, had successfully discarded the high degree of specialization of an ancient Egyptian deity and could be interpreted and worshipped in a wide variety of ways. These henotheistic traits, however, had their price, namely, her detachment, resulting in a lack of engagement with the other gods. Thus it is precisely the hymnal exclamation "I am Isis," already emerging towards the end of pharaonic culture, that describes the maturing of Isis into a universal goddess, while at the same time diminishing her powers of communication and interaction. Interaction between gods is naturally possible only where other gods exist, that is, in polytheistic religions and not in monotheism. Isis is the example of a deity who mastered the transition from a polytheistic to a henotheistic deity, even if not permanently. For the canonization of monotheism after polytheism, however, experiences with the autonomous rule of Isis were certainly groundbreaking, defining the renunciation of interaction with other divinities as desirable, since it proved that other gods no longer existed. Inscriptions dating to 100 BC in the Temple of Horus at Edfu, Rumi, written in hieroglyphs, have Isis say, "I am the only one." 300 years later, a Latin inscription discovered in the Mithraeum of Santa Maria, Capua Veter, addresses Isis as the one who is all, thus identifying her claim for exclusivity within the respective pantheons. Once again, Isis is defined by language. The Roman were particularly aware of the fact that the boundary of thought formed by the Judeo-Christian gods simultaneously draws the decisive language boundary. All other boundaries of the human language have only the character of demarcations. In the dialogue Octavius, authored by the early Latin apologist Marcus Minucius Felix, a point is made that one God cannot be defined or described by any other name. If I call him Father, you will think of him earthly. Monotheistic religions trust in the authoritative communications of one God, and the first divinity who brought things into being with words was Isis.